Hi, I'm Katy. I drank for 9 months and then I was born. I didn't see problems with me at first. I saw problems with everyone else around me, with my family system. The first memories I have are being neglected, being left alone, and being left to care for and to entertain myself. At school, I had time that was spent in special education classes to make sure that I had everything to meet my needs. By the time that I was school aged, they had figured out that I had fetal alcohol effects. They thought it best to mainstream me, but to also give me study time in special ed. The study time was wonderful, but the mainstreaming was not so much. Many times I would get things adapted for me, such as having my books blown up in large print, um, but the content of the books and the math problems were often difficult to understand, and many people didn't know how to teach me with processes that I could relate to. When I was a little baby, having to entertain myself after having been neglected by my birth mother and the maternal side of the family, I began singing to myself just out of nowhere, and that's when I discovered my God given gift of song. And a couple years later, my brother had handed me down his Casio keyboard, and I began uh, just teaching myself where all the keys were and what sounds they made. And before long, I was imitating, you know, low sounds of game show buzzers or high sounds of bicycle bells or, anything that I heard that interested me. And then I started learning pieces of song. So piano and voice have been, piano, keyboard, and voice have been my mainstays of instruments. I can also play the recorder, the guitar, and other various forms of percussion instruments, as well as stringed instruments like the auto harp. And I have an interest in learning the Celtic harp as well. I do a lot on the computer. I do a lot of social networking. I go on Facebook and I chat on Skype and do various social networking things. I'm a disability rights advocate. I'm always looking for the latest and greatest things to complain to the government about. When it comes to having disabilities and not being properly accommodated, whether in the school system, on the job, or even just everyday living, in stores or on the streets. And so I network with people with disabilities and, even outside of FAS, whether they're blind or in a wheelchair or, whatever their disability, we all come together and keep active on making sure that we have equal rights. And the term I prefer to use is partially sighted because I feel that people can get a better understanding because a lot of times when they think legally blind, they think, well, I'm blind by law. By law, I'm allowed to have a cane. You know, that's the thing they think of. A lot think I'm either totally blind or just, somehow allowed to have the cane. So when I tell them that I'm partially sighted, that I can see some things but not all things, it gives them a better understanding of what I can see and what I can't. You know. And as far as what I can see and what I can't, I have very little, if any, peripheral vision, which in layman's terms means that I can't see very well on either side of me or, below me or above me. Um, some confuse it with tunnel vision, but to my understanding, tunnel vision is a very, very, a very, very tight view of things, almost like looking through some kind of, needle-sized lens. But mine is, I can see colors and details of things close up. Um, I have no depth perception. It's very hard when I'm walking downstairs, for example. Visually, if I were to look at them, all the stairs would blur together and look like one flat image. Whereas if I'm using my long white cane to navigate, then I can tell each individual stair by the cane's feedback and be able to adapt to my environment, using my cane as a tool that helps me. When I was going to school, I made many friends among my classmates. However, there were many kids that teased me and made fun of me, calling me names or making crude remarks, or for example, the old "how many fingers am I holding up" and waving their hands in front of my face, or they would come up from behind and they would poke me on the shoulder, and when I turned around to see who it was, they would have already run off and there would be no one there. And they would use that as a trick to aggravate me. When I when I was a kid, it wasn't that I didn't realize that I wasn't like the others. I grew up in a very unprejudiced, open-minded environment, so I was taught that everyone had their differences, and that normal was just an idealistic dream. That society had they had set standards for what they believed that was right, but what was important and what mattered is the friendships that I made and the people that I came to love and accept. I love to tell blind jokes. I grew up and was raised learning to laugh with my disability instead of laughing at it and feeling sorry for myself. So, for example, when I started learning Braille, one of the jokes that I learned was, what is the most violent book a blind person has ever read? A cheese grater. I know many of you out there with fetal alcohol syndrome may have times where you get down on yourself, or people will try and point out your flaws and your faults, but don't dwell on what you can't do. Think of all the possibilities that you can do. Think of what you love the best and how you can apply it in real life. Take my example. Singing is my passion, and I'm involved in a community choir in my small town, and we're keeping classical music alive for the community, and I get a joy out of performing every season.